Welcome to the Marketing Phoenix podcast, where my guest and I will give you our best growth strategies for marketing that leads to sales. My name is Melissa Rogozinski, and I'll be your host. Today, I'm delighted to have Steve Salkin, Editor-in-Chief of Law Journal Newsletters, as our guest. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Melissa. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to do this with you. Thanks for lining right up.
Oh, no problem. Excited myself too.
So for our audience, I want everybody to know, Steve and I have been working together for about a year. I've been published in Legal Tech News, and he saw something and republished it. And unbeknownst to me, until 5 months later, when I picked up a new client as a result, thank you very much, Steve. And Steve and I were able to connect after that. We've gotten to know each other. We visit together at Legal Week and have really developed quite the collegial relationship and look for opportunities to help each other out.
And I love my hat that you gave me.
Excellent. Well, Steve, I kind of gave the audience my spiel about our relationship, but if you don't mind, tell our audience a little bit about your background and how you got into legal industry journalism.
Well, it wasn't the goal when I got out of law school. I got out of law school in the early 90s, and that was when we were facing a real recession, not the kind of semi-recession we're in now. And there just were not a lot of jobs for lawyers at that point, especially for those who are not law review, top of the class types like myself. And I answered an ad. Basically, I always wrote. I wrote in college for the school newspaper, mostly in sports, but whatever. I answered an ad. Somebody was looking for legal journalist, and that's kind of, it wasn't ALM to begin with. That was a person who did a computer law book. So I started that way. So it's kind of been legal tech since the beginning. And moved around a little bit and been with ALM and doing the newsletters for 20 years and attending Legal Tech, now Legal Week, for almost that long.
Yeah, but we're veterans of the industry. I think it's always going to be legal tech to us.
True.
Yeah. So, okay. So for our audience, Steve and I are going to discuss some post-pandemic growth strategies specifically for law firms. And then we're going to touch a little bit on the impact and the buzz of AI in legal marketing. So with that, let's start with the first article. Marketing isn't sales, but it should lead to sales. So Steve, law firms, like other businesses, have typically approached marketing and business development as completely separate functions. How does this impact a law firm's ability to drive brand recognition and revenue growth in 2023?
I think marketing services can provide client content for clients about what's going on in the industry, which again will lead to something we'll talk about later as far as thought leadership. They can show clients that they understand their business and what their goals are. And I think anytime you can do that, that's going to ingratiate your client to you and become somebody they're going to turn to when they have an issue that they need help with.
And what about business development?
Business development, you're selling yourself and you're selling your firm and you're trying to get, kind of along the same lines. You're really trying to get that client to trust you and to be someone that they turn to. And if you can show them that you are familiar with the areas of law that they need you to be familiar with and what the issues that they typically face, then you're going to develop them into the client that you need them to be. And that's, again, a return client. They're going to come to you when they have an issue. You're going to be what we call kind of a go-to lawyer. And on that list of, if they have an issue, you're going to be the one they call first, if not, hopefully first, not second.
So let's talk a little bit about the third component that lawyers don't typically think about, sales. You have marketing, you have business development, which are different functions, but then you also have sales. So what would actually happen, do you think, if lawyers began to see themselves as sales professionals in tandem with marketing and business development?
I think they have to see themselves as sales professionals to an extent, but I think more so as a service provider. They still need to collaborate with marketing on that end. I don't think lawyers should be the ones going out and trying to sell their services necessarily by themselves. That's not what we're taught in law school. That's not what we're trained for. We're trained to practice the law, know the law, analyze the law, and give a summary to the client on what the law is and how it applies to their situation. But as a as a way of thinking, they need to kind of have that in the back of their mind. But I don't think they should think of themselves as a salesperson, but know that that's certainly, especially these days, an aspect of their job.
Excellent. So let's talk about how to build a good business development plan. So in our article, 6 Steps to a Successful Business Development Plan, we discuss how critical it is to a law firm's growth strategy. It's really the bridge between marketing and sales. So why is thought leadership, like you mentioned before, why is thought leadership so important to a law firm's growth strategy?
It shows the clients that you know what you're talking about, and it shows that you're on the forefront of that industry. Clients look to lawyers, horizon scan, look ahead, see what's coming down the pike in that industry, what regulations might be coming up, what cases might be coming down that are going to be decided that might impact the issue you're facing or the industry your client is in. And that's all good stuff to show to your client that you can prove to them that you know what's going on. And again, be that, we keep going back to it, but be that go-to resource. And if you're a thought leader, and again, we'll get to it, not to jump ahead, we're going to get to, but also communicate that in a way through social media, through blogs, through client communication. Let them know without kind of being too braggy that you know what you're talking about and that you are a leader in this area of law.
So you touched on it. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit deeper about that. The kinds of activities that law firm professionals can use to gain market share that exhibits that thought leadership, like you were discussing. Let's talk about the activities and why that's important.
Yeah, one of the things we haven't mentioned, but we will here, is content marketing. Just really going after those areas that are specific to those clients. And it's going to be different for each client too. So you can't really have, it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. You really have to tailor it to each client and the industry they're in and what their typical legal issues are. Social media, one of the things that we tell people all the time is to really try to be, again, a thought leader on social media. And for lawyers, for whatever reason, it's pretty much LinkedIn these days. Mm-hmm. So post, we've had a lot of people tell us that they recommend maybe spending about 20 minutes a day on LinkedIn, just looking over what other people are posting yourself, commenting on posts, and get your name out there and get to be known as and they tell us to do it as journalists themselves. So the same thing really applies for lawyers, is you want to be the person that they think, oh, so-and-so really knows what they're talking about because I've read their comments and I've read their posts and it makes a lot of sense. And just to be the name that people, all of a sudden you're going to gain followers and you're going to have kind of a name and people will trust what you say and believe what you say. And again, when it comes time to need an attorney or need somebody to consult on an issue, they might think, hey, I've read so-and-so's blog posts or LinkedIn posts for a year, and they really know what they're talking about. I'm going to check with that person first and see what they say and see if they're available to handle my issue.
Yeah, I agree. And if you look throughout the legal industry, both for law firms and legal tech service providers and product providers as well, you can kind of see who the influencers are, because you see them every day. And we do training too for all of our clients. And, we talk to them about, even if you're not creating your own content yet, definitely plan for that, but start getting engaged, watch, who's talking about the kinds of issues that, yes, are important to you, but more important to your clients, more important to your prospects, your targets. What are they most interested in? When you engage with that and you like something or you cheer something on, be sure that you also make a comment about that, about why you thought that was insightful. Because that's the kind of thing that it starts showing up on your feed and people start seeing your name. And then as you're creating content, like you said earlier, make sure that the content you're creating, again, it's not about you, your features and benefits. You don't have to sell that. If you're preparing content and putting it out there about understanding what the pain points are of your clients, your target clients, your prospects, they're going to see that. And that's what builds trust, and they'll follow you. And then, and there's other ways to kind of not only get that exposure, but actually get lead generation and opportunities out of it. And I'll say this too, you probably know this as well. You're almost never going to get somebody posting on LinkedIn, hey, so-and-so, I need an appointment with you. You're not going to know people are following you I had one person calling me for years and did not know it until they reached out and he had an opportunity for me. So they will reach out to you privately through email, through direct message, what have you. But just know that it works. It's brand awareness, it's thought leadership, it's developing that reputation, developing that trust, and they will find you. They know where to find you.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say is a little trick you can do when you find those influencers, try to connect with them so that when people do look at your profile or they do glance, say, oh, so-and-so is connected with them. So it automatically gives you kind of, back end credibility in that regard, even though you might not be best friends with the person or you might not even know that person. But if they've accepted your connection for whatever reason, you can write a little note and say, hey, I met you at this conference, or I followed you for a long time, or whatever it is. If you get that connection and other people see that you're connected to that influencer and kind of, by proxy, you're kind of an influencer yourself in that regard.
No, and that's a good idea too. When you're connecting with people, make sure that you, because LinkedIn will let you add a note. Don't just send random connections, but add a note.
Because they're not going to accept if they don't know, unless they happen to know your name for whatever. But yeah, even if it's just, we do it at Legal Week all the time. We meet how many people we meet at Legal Week every year. And we say, oh, we'll get together or whatever. But then you think, okay, well, I'm going to send them an invite to connect. If you don't add, hey, we met at Legal Week last week and, we talked about this and that. They're not going to remember. It's just, you just meet way too many people at that show and any conference. And so you can't just kind of randomly out of the blue say, I want to connect with you because I follow you. You need to add some kind of reason why they should.
Add value.
The other thing I will say real quick about what we find a lot of on law firm websites is that law firms tend to promote themselves and talk about themselves on those things, especially lawyers on the bios. They'll say, oh, we won this case, which was worth X amount, or not even mention the amount, but we won this case. We did this, we did that. It's all about them. It's not about how they're servicing the client. So I think you need to kind of take another look at your website and see if it's really attracting clients to think that you were doing the job for them, not just bragging about what you can do, what you have done. Every firm will say they focus on the client, but if your website is filled with stories about how your personal achievements and the firm's personal achievements, that doesn't really follow up that message. It's kind of just talk at that point.
You're exactly right. Your website is the window into the soul of your law firm, and it needs to speak for you, because that's the only way people are going to want to speak to you, is what they see through your website, through the window of your website.
Absolutely.
All right.
And I think it's an area that nobody talks. I mean, nobody sits down with lawyers and say, here's how to, run your website. And these website companies who, will come to offer you to make the website. They don't care they're going to ask you for the content. They don't care what it says. They're just going to put whatever you put. So you just need to make sure that that's more client focused than inward.
There's so many other things we could talk about a website, because all of the websites that come to us, they're not connected to a practice management tool or a CRM tool. So even when people are coming to your website and they choose to fill out a form that they want more information, like there's on the back end an operational system that is either broken or non-existent. So, but that's a whole other conversation. I can go down a rabbit hole on that. But let's talk about the sexy stuff, Steve.
Speaking of rabbit holes.
Yes, let's talk about AI. Let's talk about artificial intelligence, because it's a hot topic right now, but this is here to stay. So AI is going to become an evergreen topic. But so let's talk about this, how a law practice should embrace AI. And quite frankly, in many ways has probably already been using it. It just got a sexy name and new branding and marketing. So the hot case that everybody knows about, Robert Mata versus Avianca Airlines. I think I pronounced that right. The case is all over the news. It's where the lawyer for Mata used ChatGPT to research and write a brief, and it cited 6 completely fabricated, hallucinated cases. And there was a motion to sanction him, and I think the federal judge basically said, you know what, I don't have to sanction this person or the law firm at the time, because they've gotten so much exposure globally for this. They've paid a pretty high price for doing this. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, sometimes the phrase "there's no such thing as bad news" doesn't apply. Bad publicity. I'm sorry, I screwed that up. There's no such thing as bad publicity. Sometimes that's not true. Sometimes it is.
AI can be a good tool, but it's got to, we still have to manage it. So let's talk about that. So we know that AI is not going to replace lawyers,
I'll start with this. The way I look at AI is I'm fairly more skeptical than most on AI, especially as far as applied to legal. The way I phrase it to some people is AI is like that kid who, as like a toddler, was cute when it did stupid things, but now it's a teenager, and when it does stupid things, there's ramifications, and you've got to kind of rein it in somehow. It's not so cute anymore when it fabricates cases, and you actually bring that to a proceeding, and you actually rely on those. That's not so good. So for me, you can't really rely on it too much. It's great for some stuff, and I know you're going to ask me about what was good for. So basic tasks like legal research, like maybe even coming up with a sample brief to, which will mention some previous cases, some case law, some precedent, but you have to check those obviously, because as we saw in that case, it makes them up sometimes. You have to make sure that they're not only real cases, but actually still the most recent case in that area. But that'll give you a good start on your brief. Now, the other side of that is you probably already have that, because if you're a personal injury firm or you're a insurance defense firm, whatever you do, you probably have your basic brief already from the other cases that you've done that you're just pulling up and you're modifying. You're not really starting a brief from scratch in most cases. So you kind of already have that. So a lot of people are pointing that as a big thing AI can do, but really in reality, most firms have those samples already that they just kind of base their own work on, depending on the case that's in front of them. I don't think we can trust it with any analytical work yet. Again, still basic stuff and we've talked before, and you mentioned kind of the stuff that ALM is doing a little bit now of, what cases were brought before what judge and what was the outcome, and how many trademark cases were brought before this judge, and what was the outcome? Did the plaintiff prevail? Did the defendant prevail? What jurisdiction was it in? All that stuff can be put together. AI can put that all together for you. It's a lot of work if you want to do that manually. AI can do it for you in seconds. That's a great tool. You can then base that on advising your client. So, look, well, you brought this patent infringement case in Georgia, and now we have this judge. Well, 75% of the time, the judge rules against plaintiffs. So maybe we should think twice about bringing that case. It's going to cost X amount. Is it really worth it when the analytics say that we're probably not going to prevail in court? Or maybe we should settle the case, because if we actually go to trial, we're probably not going to prevail, something like that. So that's a great way to use it. And as for me, at this point, that's kind of where we're at for me. I don't really know until it evolves into more accurate. And also, we talked earlier too, before the call, the data set is limited, and it's not, especially for Chat GPT, it hasn't been updated since March of 2022, I think at this point.
Was it the fall of 2022?
Was it fall of 2022? So,
yeah,
it's not even up to date, the field that is looking for answers. So a lot could have happened in the law in that span of time. So you can't really trust it for that. Again, it's a great starting point. Use it for stuff that will take you hours to do manually. Great. But as far as legal analysis and relying on it for case law, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I think doing basic research, but you're still the lawyer, still the legal professional. And we're going to talk about marketing too, but it's still, at the end of the day, it's got your name on it. It's your ethical duty. We have to learn technology, but it's also an ethical duty to make sure that everything has been verified and is accurate.
Yeah, and it's a malpractice case waiting to happen. I mean, regardless of what that judge ruled, it's just, if you rely on AI to write your brief and the cases are false, then, you're going to have to live with that, and the client can sue you for malpractice because you didn't do your job.
Right. All right, so let's talk a little bit about AI and marketing, which I know is a little bit more my wheelhouse, but I certainly want to hear what you have to say about it too. So, what are some of the pros that you have heard or seen on how AI is being used in legal marketing?
Yeah, SEO, I
Mhm.
think is a great tool. I think it can identify the search terms that are generating the most traffic, and I think you can make sure you include those. You can probably even write a good headline using SEO for your marketing materials. And similar to legal work, you can use it for a basic email or a basic message, and you just have to review it as the professional. You know the industry, you know what you want to say to your client. You want to add your voice to it, which is a big problem I have with AI. It has no real human voice, and there's no interpersonal connection there, which you want to, especially in marketing. I mean, it's a people business, right? You're people to people, and
Mhm.
you're communicating with people, you're developing relationships, and AI can't do that. Again, it can give you a great starting point, and but you really need somebody to go through it and make sure it says what you want the client to know about you and about yourself and the way your firm and your company operate.
Yeah, and that kind of lends to some of the downside about using AI in marketing. It's like you mentioned earlier, there's a lack of up-to-date information. It's artificial intelligence, not emotional intelligence. And it's not the subject matter expert. And obviously with the hallucinations, we have to check that and make sure, and it takes time to, uh, AI doesn't know your audience and it doesn't know your voice and how you and your audience are accustomed to communicating with each other. And we've certainly seen issues with compliance and data privacy. We've already seen that ChatGPT has been breached. ChatGPT now has its first libel suit filed against it for hallucinations and defamation. So it kind of reminded, when it came out, it kind of reminded me of what was that social media platform that the kids were using to send pictures of each other, and it was going to Snapchat, right?
Snapchat, right?
They were
Right.
this is back in the heyday of e-discovery, the height of e-discovery. They were using Snapchat to send pictures back and forth to each other, thinking it was going to disappear. And I remember seeing this on the news, like the Today Show or something. I thought to myself, you know what? If we just wait 30 days, somebody's going to come up with the solution that says, by the way, and surely somebody did. And he said, look, for $25, I can tap into your kid's phone. And look, there's this folder structure that looks just like Outlook. And there was a folder called .no media, and you open the folder and there's all the pictures right there. And I thought to myself, when AI came out, it's the same thing. It's going to be a good tool. It's not going away. It's here to stay. It's going to be developed, but just hold your breath for a minute and let's watch this thing play out over a few months. And here we are a few months later. And that's what we've seen. It's been breached. It's causing hallucinations. People are misusing it, not paying attention. It's got a lawsuit against it. There's people who don't understand the power of it are creating all kinds of data privacy issues. And that kind of leads into the next thing that we mentioned that I was actually brought up to me by one of my consultants earlier this week. There's now the conversation about the collapse of the AI model. And basically, the idea behind this was there's a group of researchers that did a study over how the information that AI is eating right now is limited. There was an end date to it. And so at what point does it start regurgitating the information and start training itself to the point that it completely eliminates the human generated content? And what happens when AI starts teaching itself and loses touch? It was a really interesting article.
Yeah, then we have Skynet, and we have all the stuff that happened in the Terminator movies, so that's not good.
No.
Yeah, so kind of tailing off of that, AI, if it like you said, it looks at the limited data it has, or not necessarily limited data, it's a lot of data, but it's limited in time in terms of how up to date it is. And if it doesn't have that information, it's going to make it up, which is where you get the hallucinations from. And as soon as I heard that, kind of put me out on it as a general rule. One of the exercises I did after Legal Week, because I talked to a lot of people there about AI, and somebody, I forget who it was, but one of the people I talk to all the time, I see every year, said that a buddy of his said to have AI write your bio and see what comes up. And so he did, and he had all the, it had him going to Stanford, but he didn't go to Stanford. So I put this in an article shortly after Legal Week too, on the cybersecurity newsletter. I did it for myself. And I was an award-winning author. I was teaching, and I have done none of that. And so, it's because, given a vacuum, it'll fill it with stuff that it thinks you might have also done. And so, we're kind of at that point where I don't think it's improved. I think the latest version has improved on those kind of things, but it's still not really can be trusted. However, I will say that the common phrase that has come from after Legal Week, and, we've heard probably a ton, is that AI won't replace lawyers, but AI will replace lawyers who don't use AI. And I think there's some truth to that.
That's really interesting. And that is an excellent way. People need to think about that. They need to really absorb that comment right there. That's interesting. So, Steve, with that, we've talked about a lot of things. We talked about what strategies look like for law firms to grow their businesses post-pandemic, between marketing, business development, and sales, and understanding, yes, these are three separate functions, but they really need to work together and how to do that. And then we've talked about thought leadership and what is it? It's content marketing. But it's really, putting out content about your audience, your clients, your buyers, where their pain points are, understanding that and putting it out into the channels where they're going to find you. Speaking engagements, using social media properly, engaging, being seen, brand awareness. And then we talked about artificial intelligence, the pros, what is it, the pros, the cons, and this new concept of the AI model collapse. So we covered a lot, but with that, how would you like to wrap up this interview? What other ideas or advice do you have for our audience today?
I think, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir too here. I think that marketing is a people business, and you need a personal touch, you need an interpersonal connection. And the other thing we haven't touched on, which again we could probably spend an hour on, and I think it's gotten improved, but you have to try to make sure, if you're working in a law firm as a marketer, to get your voice heard, and it's not always easy. I think it's a little easier now, especially for some of the firms that have kind of realized that that's an integral part of the business. But there are still a lot of firms out there who don't realize the impact that marketing has and how important it is to grow their business and to develop their clients and develop their book of business. So that can be very difficult. But if you do have the ear of the managing partner or law firm leader, make sure they know that how important marketing is and how important it is to collaborate with, as you mentioned, all three sides of the law firm business. And firms are, again, becoming more aware of that as frankly, as we kind of age out, as the kind of, previous generation of, it was always been done this way, so we have to do it that way kind of people, as they kind of age out and retire and move on. And the younger generation kind of starts to lead the firms. I think that's getting better, but it's still an issue. And it's still something that, if you have the year, it's just the collaboration between all the aspects of a firm and of how an attorney works is important.
So better collaboration and less silos.
Correct. Absolutely. Great way to put it. Yeah.
Great. All right, Steve, thank you very much for joining me for the Rising Phoenix interview series. We've gotten to work together now for the last year, and you've done so much for me. And now I'm happy to have you on this new program of ours. And thank you to our audience for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed the interview with Steve Salkin, editor-in-chief of Law Journal Newsletter. Be sure that you subscribe to it. My name is Melissa Rogozinski with RPC Strategies, home of the Dream Team. Please connect with RPC Strategies on LinkedIn, or you can email us at rpc@rpcgrowthstrategies.com or 205-873-1234. Thanks so much.